Hey, this is Mr. Wells. Today we're going to be talking about the Sustainability Case Study Project. So, first of all, I have a case study introductory material folder right here. Let's click on that in our Schoology page. And the first thing that you're going to open is the Earth Science Sustainability Case Study Information PDF. So on your iPad, you're just going to download that right into Notability. So I'll open that up right now. Okay, so here's the Earth Science Sustainability Case Study Intro document. So what you should do first when you download this into Notability is to read through this introduction here. And I'll kind of summarize it right now. I would probably pause while you're reading through this. But essentially what you're going to be doing is over the next couple weeks, you're going to be designing a 4 to 7 minute video research project that's going to be related to a topic that you might find interesting within the realm of sustainability inside the field of earth science. You might be asking, well, what is sustainability? We haven't really gotten to that within class, even though we have been thinking about it almost every topic that we've done, almost every lab worksheet that we've done. The earth science teachers here have been trying to stress concepts that are related to how we as humans have an impact on society. Down here, I've got a rough definition of sustainability. What it really means is the ability to meet the needs of the present. That includes resources, expansion, development, right? While accounting for the fact that it is our responsibility as a society to not compromise the ability of future generations to meet their own needs and demands. Okay, so I'm going to go over some of the case study project guidelines. Again, I would stress that you should probably read through this yourself pretty thoroughly. These are all of our expectations and the rules for the case study project. So, number one thing is that the case study project is individual. You're eventually going to submit it to Schoology as a video presentation. You can use Explain Everything. So Explain Everything is an app that we'll probably talk about a little bit in class as well, because it's the app that I think leads to the most success with this project. So it might be something that you're not so familiar with. A lot of students like to use iMovie. iMovie works really well too. But Explain Everything, you're able to create, you're able to draw, annotate. It makes the project a lot more engaging as you're doing it, right? If you have some kind of live interaction with the audience that you're showing the video to. Explain Everything is a free app and self-service. So I do, in this case study sustainability folder, I do have some video tutorials on how to use Explain Everything, because it's probably something that most of you haven't had any experience with. A lot of you have had experience with iMovie. If you're really comfortable with that, you know how to make good iMovies, stick with that. The Earth Science Sustainability Case Study Project Worksheet, so that we'll talk about that in a little bit. That's something that's in your folder. This is an actual assignment that you're going to do right here at the beginning of the research process. Really what you're going to do is you're going to declare your topic. You're going to tell me why you chose that topic, and then you're going to actually start the research process. But again, we'll talk about that in a little bit here. Your project must include at least 3 different resources. So different means different websites. So sources should be primary. So for example, if you're doing a project that's within the field of sustainability in astronomy, you're probably going to use nasa.gov as one of your websites. Do not rely on that for all 3 of your sources, right? So you should be able to take one primary source like nasa.gov and come up with a lot of information that you're going to end up putting in your project. I usually suggest starting with like a simple Google search, learning some information about your topic, and then digging into the tougher stuff, the scientific journals and articles later. But those are definitely going to be recommended because you're going to get a lot more information. Also includes printed works such as scientific journals, magazines, earth science iBooks. I have a whole library of earth science related textbooks that are written at the college level in the classroom, so that might be something else to look at too. The video must be 4 to 7 minutes long. So I almost always make exceptions for videos that are longer. But the risk when you have a video that's longer is that you might not have content that's really worthy of being in your project, right? It might just be putting in stuff for the sake of putting in stuff. So that's why I do have this upper bounds. Almost every project that I've given 100% to in my career has been around the 7-minute mark. Because this is a significant project, it shouldn't be superficial. You should be doing a pretty deep dive into your topic. The video has to, this is really important, the video has to contain your own voice. So you have to be speaking throughout your whole project. Another thing to go along with this is absolutely do not put in videos from other students or from YouTube or anything like that. It should be narrated by you through the whole process. And the video has to contain both images from media sources as well as diagrams and images that you're going to create yourself, which is why I think Explain Everything is really good, because Explain Everything, you're able to do a lot of annotations and drawings while you're doing the presentation. If you choose to use iMovie, you're probably going to scan in something that you created either on your iPad or on paper or something like that. But there has to be a creativity component to it. Okay, so this is the rubric for the project. This is something you're going to want to read over as you start the project, as you're working on the project, and definitely before you submit the project. One thing that I will say is that I'm actually going to have you assign yourself a grade when it comes time to turn in the project. So I will post a separate PDF of just the rubric, and it's something that you're actually going to grade yourself on, because I want you to think about the process of, you know, kind of how I'm going to look at this, and to see if what I'm going to end up grading you as kind of lines up with how you think the project went in general. But so you should read through this pretty carefully at first, and then definitely, you know, kind of as you're framing your project, because some of these requirements are pretty specific, right? So I'm going to kind of hone in on what I would consider the outstanding points, the 10 out of 10s. So to meet a 10 out of 10 for the format, you have to make sure that your project's 4 to 7 minutes. It has to be a visual interactive presentation, so Explain Everything, iMovie, something like that. And it has to include images and sources from multiple media outlets. I do have a creativity component, so the creativity includes a couple things. It includes your own voice, and then I said that we have to have some diagrams and images that you created yourself. That's part of that too. Link to sustainability content, making sure that you covered all of the suggested material. Suggested material is something we'll talk about in a second. I have a separate document where we talk about some example topics. Within those, I give you some suggested places to look at, and what this is saying is that you covered all of those points and went above and beyond, right? So covering all of the basic points that I outlined for you, and then honing in on something specific, that would qualify as a full credit for the link to the sustainability content. The overall content, so that's demonstrating that you understand what you're talking about, that you have a significant knowledge of the project that you were researching, because you're spending some time with this, right? So that's important. You should have some knowledge about what you've been studying for the last couple weeks in class here. And then when I say create a narrative, right? So these are projects in sustainability. Almost all of these projects are going to be centered on how do humans have an impact on the Earth system. The projects have to be coherent. They should have a clear beginning, middle, and end. It shouldn't just be random facts that you're spouting, regurgitating from other websites. So if it is mostly fact regurgitation, that you're just listing a bunch of stuff, that's going to be more like a 5 out of 10. And for sources, it's either you get up the points or you don't. So you either have 3 sources or you don't. If you have 2 sources, you get a 0. If you have 3 or more, and you probably should have more, you get a 10 out of 10. But 3 sources minimum to achieve the points on the rubric here. All right, so I'm back in that sustainability case study project folder. We just went over the Earth Science Sustainability Case Study information. The next thing I'm going to have you introduce is this next document, the Introduction Project Worksheet. Open that one up. So this is one you definitely need to download into Notability, because it's something that you're going to be turning in to Schoology. Pretty quick here too. So as you're getting this assignment video, this is something that you should be working on right away. Now you don't have a topic yet. We haven't gone over that sheet, but this is something to make sure you have in your iPad right away. I'm not going to go over this whole worksheet. I designed this so that it can be walked through as a self-paced assignment. So kind of read through the guidelines. Make sure you have complete sentences. Make sure you're kind of talking through all of your points. If these are like one-word answers for all of these and you're not putting a lot of thought or effort into it, I'm just going to make you redo it. You need 2 things to get this assignment like fully done. You have to submit this to Schoology, and then when we're back in class, you need to be able to come up and kind of like how we do our lab checkoffs, you're going to turn this into me in person, and I'm going to read through it real quick and sign it off for you. So yeah, this whole worksheet needs to be done at some point, pretty quick, right? So I'll put a deadline on the Schoology page on the Dropbox. Obviously, it's going to vary by trimester, but it's usually going to be about 48 hours after I introduce the assignment is when this is going to be due. All right, so I'm back out on the materials page of the case study research folder. We've got one more document to look at. This is something that you're going to download into Notability as well. This is the case study example topics, choose your topic PDF. Open that up. Again, you're going to put this into Notability on your iPad. Think through this whole document. We have close to 70 potential research topics. Now, what I'll stress is that you don't have to choose something on this list. I think we tried to cover the gamut of everything that you could possibly want to do. I constantly add new projects to this list. But if there's something that you really want to do that you think might be related to sustainability, you either send me a Schoology message, or you can talk to me in person in class, and we can kind of hash out a topic. Really briefly, the way that this document works is, let's say that I wanted to talk about acid mine drainage, right? So let's say that I want to do my case study project on acid mine drainage. So this is within topic 2. It's a mining topic, so these kind of full colored bullet points here, those are large topics that we're going to make several case studies out of. So you can't do a topic on just mining, right? Because mining is way too broad. We're going to do something specific. So I said I wanted to do my case study on acid mine drainage. So when you choose your topic, you're choosing one of the actual topics that are labeled case study. They have the hollow bullet point. On the rubric, I talked about the square bullet points. Those are the suggestions as to how you're going to start your topic. So these are things that at a minimum you should address, right? This is, answering just these questions, this is like a 5 out of 10 on the project, right? This is your basic background information with maybe a couple hints at what you should be doing as you dive into the research process. So I said for this one, what causes acid mine drainage? Historical issues with acid mine drainage, so kind of past disasters if we had, what are Superfund sites, and this might be just gibberish to you right now because we haven't gone over this in class yet. This is something that we talk about when we get into climate and climate change and issues related to that. But this is kind of the logic. We might be pushing ourselves. We might be doing something that we haven't done in class yet. And I think that's interesting. This is a really cool topic. This would be something that would be, I think, fascinating to study. So these are, like I said, these are suggestions of things that you should kind of frame your project around. You should address all of these, but they might help you hone in on something specific. So a good project, a full 10 out of 10 on that category that we were talking about on the rubric, that would include covering these and then going above and beyond, picking something specific. So I might get really interested in like a specific Superfund site, right? That's what would make for a good case study project, is addressing all of these bullet points and then going into a deeper dive on something specific. So maybe for this project, like a really specific Superfund site, how it evolved over time and how we addressed it as a society, something like that. So this is something that you might have questions with. Again, this is, you don't just randomly willy-nilly choose a topic, because this is something you're sticking with for, the next 3+ weeks of class. So if you have any questions, if you think, oh, I am actually really interested in acid mine drainage, but I don't know much about it, that would be something to talk with me about ASAP, right? Do something that you're interested in. Don't just pick a topic because it seems easy or short or you know a lot about it already. It might be good to challenge yourself. Those are usually the best project ones that, you go into it with an open mind, you don't know what you're talking about, and you learn. And that process of learning independently is what allows you to be able to teach it when you design your final research video. All right, so that should do it for the introduction to the case study project. I said I had a couple links in here on some kind of resources to look at, so I do have an Explain Everything tutorial that was just put on by the Explain Everything company. Usually what I like to do in class is have an optional session maybe before school, after school, or during a class period if if it's kind of a shorter day, where I might actually do an Explain Everything demonstration in class. So if you have interest in that, you let me know, because the more demand I have for it, the more likely that I'll run a session where we actually talk about this. I heavily recommend using Explain Everything. It's great, works amazing on the iPad, it's super intuitive. But if you're more comfortable with iMovie, then I would do that. I do have an iPad iMovie tutorial as well, so that might be something to look at too. And if you've already used Explain Everything once or twice and you need a refresher, I do have an in-depth tutorial too, which just takes some, it assumes that you know what you're talking about with Explain Everything, that you've done maybe a project or two with it, and it gives you some helpful hints on how to make your project better, more interactive. And last thing here, these two videos here, so this list will probably grow. These are actual FHS student projects that I posted to YouTube. So these are some video links as to projects that were basically A-level projects. These were really good projects that I've had in the past. And it was a little tough this trimester because the sustainability project is actually new. What we used to do was just a case study on pretty much anything within earth science. I thought that was a little bit too simple, but I did have a couple students that did these sustainability related case study projects. So don't rely on what you're seeing here as the end all be all, because these two projects were done under kind of slightly different guidelines. But I would say that these qualify very closely to what I would be expecting for this new project, so I put these in there. Well, all right. Thanks for watching this. This was a kind of a longer introduction to the case study project. Again, this is all information that you can find in the Sustainability Case Study Project Materials folder. This is my favorite part of the class. I love the case study project. I get so many good projects every trimester. This is just far and away the coolest thing for me. Students love it. When I get feedback at the end of every trimester, they say that this is just this was the best part of class. You get out of it what you put into it. So some students get really into their projects, and I get some really incredible videos. Yeah. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Schoology messages, in class, what have you. This was our case study project introduction. Thanks for watching.